Welcome to the Scoop with Dukes. I'm your host, Philip Dukes, aka Dukes the Scoop. Check me out on Twitter and Instagram at Dukes the Scoop. And please be sure to hit the like and subscribe button. If you have not become a member already, please check the description of the video. You will see first of all, there's a link there, and there are varying levels of support. The more you support, the more I can bring you this free content. This is an AU Scoop, and I so, interesting enough, on Sunday's live show with the World Report, shout out to Caesar, shout out to Mike G. We talked about South Florida, the players there. We talked about Andrew Warsaw, the new GM at Auburn, Alex Fagan, star recruiter. And we got to the subject of who would play quarterback at Auburn next year. And, being an Auburn alum and having this strong kind of feel about the SEC, I believe I misspoke when I spoke on Byrum Brown. So I said a few things. I probably said a few things. A lot of people speak about Byrum Brown being a part of an exclusive club of 3,000-yard passers and 1,000-yard rushers. And I, for one, said, well, don't let those numbers fool you, because there was another guy recently who did something similar in Caden Salter and Hugh Freeze's offense, who had 2,900 yards and 1,000 rushing yards. I think it was 2,874, but very close. And I said, okay, so just understand the difference between Group of Five and SEC. And I said, all right. And then, I also said, I don't see a ton of difference between Byrum Brown and Ashton Daniels. And then I said, okay. I stood on that statement for a while, and then I said, let's go watch them in depth. Now, up to that point, I had only watched a couple of games. And then I really dug in, and I went and watched Byrum Brown. Byrum Brown is a ball player. I feel like if Byrum Brown goes to the transfer portal, it won't just be Auburn that will be clamoring for his services. I watched Byrum Brown against Florida. I watched Byrum Brown against multiple schools. I watched him against Memphis. I watched him electrifying runs. I saw him show arm strength. I saw him control the line of scrimmage with where it looks like he may have checked off. I saw a lot out of Byrum Brown. And now when I think Byrum Brown, 6'3", 230 pounds, first and foremost, but doesn't look like it. When you hear 6'3", 230, some people, the comparison, when I'm thinking of 230-pound quarterback under 6'4", I'm thinking Jalen Milroe a little bit. But he's like Jalen Milroe stretched out a little. It's kind of crazy. There were some runs where he 1,000% ran over people and ran through people. He can run over you. He can run around you. He can throw it in front of you. And he can for darn sure throw it over the top of you. Strong arm. So this puts Auburn in a little bit of a dilemma, because you have Ashton Daniels, who has another year of eligibility, one more year, just like Byrum Brown. And then Jackson Arnold has already removed himself from the equation. Last year's starter to begin the season. Then you have Deuce Knight, who flashed tons of potential. 6 touchdown game against Mercer, where people say, and I've seen it in the comments, you're going to compare what he did to a season, a 3,000-yard passing, 1,000-yard rushing season? And I'm going to say, I'm not going to compare it. But I'm not going to just sweep it under the rug either. Deuce Knight against a good Mercer team. Now, that Mercer team got blown out by South Dakota State, I believe it is, in last week's in this weekend's game, FCS game against in the FCS playoffs, excuse me. But don't discount the tools that he displayed. Mercer has some guys that are going to play Power 4 football that he ran by, and I mean some fast ones that are definitely going to play Power 4 football. I don't want to discount Deuce Knight by any means because you only had a small sample size. Now, the question is, if you're Deuce Knight and you know they're bringing in Byrum Brown, do you stay? If you're Byrum Brown and you know Deuce Knight is staying, do you still come? What does Ashton Daniels do with any of this, right? So let's talk about Byrum Brown. And really, it's funny because Deuce Knight, when you look at suitors, if Deuce Knight were to hit the transfer portal, two teams that I think would try to get involved early would be Ole Miss and LSU. Now, this is all me. This is what I'm thinking. Reading the tea leaves, looking at connections. At Ole Miss last year, one of the main guys recruiting him, and he built the relationship, was with Kevin Bolden, who was sort of like a Kenyatta Watson in that area. Well, Kevin Bolden, earlier in the year, before Lane Kiffin got the job, took on that same role at LSU. Okay. Now Lane Kiffin's at LSU, and Ole Miss was a very, very tough competitor for Deuce Knight services the first time around. Okay. So you got to put LSU in there. Who else but could LSU also be a candidate for a guy like Byrum Brown? Let's say, I don't know, the Ole Miss quarterbacks choose to stay at Ole Miss, fight it out one more year. LSU, whose offensive coordinator is Charlie Weiss, who recruited Charlie Weiss? Excuse me. Who recruited Byrum Brown to South Florida in the first place? Charlie Weiss. Yep. That was his lead recruiter. So before Charlie Weiss took the job at Ole Miss, he was at South Florida. Very interesting. Byrum Brown chose to stay. So there's a connection there where LSU could be a player for Deuce Knight or Byrum Brown, depending on what Auburn decides to do or what these players decide to do. You can't count Ole Miss out. Ole Miss, where Pete Golden is now the head coach. You know, the ties that Deuce Knight has to the state of Mississippi. These are going to be two really strong suitors for a guy like Deuce Knight if he chooses to hit the transfer portal. Or Auburn can promise, the new staff, Coach Golesh can promise these guys that it'll be an open competition. And when you got young guys and you got a young guy in Deuce Knight, you got Byrum Brown, and you got Ashton Daniels. I think at this point, Ashton Daniels has to play this year. So I don't know how that affects him. Byrum Brown has to play. Deuce Knight has used his red shirt year, but he still has, he could play in a rotational role or in certain packages this year and still have 3 years to play after that. A lot of people feel as if we shouldn't get too excited about the tools that Deuce Knight has, but I'm not one of those people. I think he is very toolsy, and I think he has Heisman potential in the right offense. I really do. There are just some things that Deuce Knight is going to be able to do with the ball in his hands. And when you talk to coaches, you talk to scouts. As a matter of fact, scouts more than anything when you talk to scouts, they are salivating about the potential that Deuce Knight has. But also, when you look at the NFL, like so right now, Ashton Daniels and Byrum Brown right now, I'm not even sure based on potential if you drafted if all three of these guys went to the NFL draft today, go look up mock draft profiles. Go look at all of them. Byrum Brown has some traction there, but it's all late round. Ashton Daniels started to pick up a little bit, but more so in the late round based on athleticism. There, Deuce Knight has a really lofty projection in a few years. So I would say this is a good problem because you've got three options that I feel like you can win with in this offense. Now, this is a foregone conclusion about Byrum Brown coming. We are not. He's not in the transfer portal yet. He may decide to stay in South Florida. He might like Heartline. They may hit him with a bag and say, "Look, you will go down as the most legendary player in South Florida history." Maybe he stays there. So he's developed a relationship with Coach Golesh, but they didn't recruit him to South Florida. Charlie Weiss did. If you're Auburn, how do you handle this situation? Do you feel like the defense? And I think this is the thing too. I will want to say, I think a lot of fans are expecting Auburn right now to be playoff contenders next year with good quarterback play and a good offense. I just think with a lot of turnover, it could happen. You could be contenders, but with a lot of turnover in the SEC, maybe you're a year away from being that top tier team. But I could see an 8-win season next year, which is I just want to get to a winning season with a solid foundation. So, guys, tell me in the comments, how would you handle Auburn's quarterback conundrum, which I think is a good problem at this time? Start Ashton Daniels, start Deuce Knight, or bring in Byrum Brown and start him? Drop it in the comments, guys. I appreciate your time. I'm out.